Hi, my name is Miguel Pinheiro, and I'm part of the Innovate team that has prepared a series of videos to walk you through some fascinating grant opportunities in the European Union. The European Union has many programs in areas such as innovation, justice, mobility, and health, to name a few. Today, we are focusing on the key funding program for research and innovation, which is called Horizon Europe. In a simplified view, Horizon Europe, which runs until 2027, has 95 billion euros for grants and soft funding to create and better disperse excellent knowledge and technologies. The intention is to fund projects that create impacts towards tackling global challenges. So if you want to win one of these prestigious multi-million euro grants, you need to think about how your project will create global impacts. So, what are we covering today in this brief session? Here's a list of the topics. We'll quickly go through the structure of Horizon Europe and its priority areas of research and innovation where the EU is investing. We will cover some of the jargon of these EU projects so you can be more familiar when listening to our other videos in this series. And we will end with some tips and tricks to consider when building your consortium for success, hopefully showing you also how collaborative projects are an attractive opportunity for increasing your available funds for research and development, as well as to build a value network around you. Come along with us. Hopefully you've memorized that there are grants to help solve global challenges. But before we add more detail into it, let's quickly grasp the structure of Horizon Europe. On the left side, Pillar 1 is for excellent science. We are talking here about programs that are very driven towards fundamental research and discovery, primarily led by academia and research institutions. In Pillar 2, we have 6 clusters designed around some of the key challenges faced by the world today, such as digitalization, climate change, food security, among others. We will go through these in a minute. Lastly, on the right side, you see Pillar 3, which funds many disruptive ideas and innovations driven by small companies. Our focus on this series is on the middle pillar, and in particular the 6 clusters, which attract the majority of the funds available in Horizon Europe, as can be seen on this graph. An essential keyword when looking at this Horizon Europe landscape is work program. Most of Horizon Europe initiatives follow this logic of having a work program, which is kind of an action plan. This action plan sets out the funds will be used towards specific funding opportunities, aiming at target outcomes and destinations. Let's look at the schematic of how EU policy priorities convert into specific topics that you can apply to. The idea here is not that you memorize this, but rather that you understand that each project funded by the EU is a piece or a cog in a larger machine with higher purposes. But if you have robust knowledge of those purposes, you can make a stronger project. The EU sets specific priorities for progress, such as the Green Deal within energy or mobility, or the Fit for Digital Age within digitalization, among others. Each one of these EU priorities is broken down into key strategic orientations that will direct how the grants must be allocated in one or more clusters. Think of these as vectors of expected progress. These vectors of progress are in certain impact areas where research and innovation are needed. In very concrete terms, the EU expects that these vectors will help us all reach a destination. A destination is a long-term effect that is the direct result of progress and achievements in research and innovation. Research must be needed to achieve the destination. In Cluster 5, for example, one of the destinations is transformation towards climate neutrality. We will not get to climate neutrality without huge investments in scientific progress. Hence, Cluster 5 has many calls for proposals and expected outcomes that act as pathways to get to the destination. So if you look at this diagram, you will see the blue arrow on the left comes from policies, the top row, say around the Green Deal, which then leads to specific objectives and target impacts around climate neutrality, the next two rows, towards achieving the destination of being climate neutral. If you then follow the green arrow next to it, you will see that there are expected outcomes, which are specific effects of each funded project, which must also align with the destination. What is planned and promised in each project must contribute to the destination. The work program in each cluster, if you see the green arrow, defines these destinations. Since each destination is a big endeavor, no single project will achieve it alone. Again, remember the pieces or cogs of a larger machine? Do you see the relationship? That's what we're going for. So there are multiple topics open every year that specify a group of expected outcomes related to the destination. If you now follow the gray arrow on the right moving upwards, you will see that each project must build up its results, objectives, tools, and so on, if you look at the last row, towards achieving the scope and outcomes specified on the call and thereafter fulfilling part of the destination. A successful project must follow the sequence of the gray arrow. Hopefully, you now understand better how to plan for success. Here are a few of the key concepts from the previous diagram that we think you should keep in memory. Each work program is designed around a series of impact-driven destinations. Each destination describes socioeconomic challenges to be addressed and the related expected impacts that research and innovation activities will contribute to. Under each destination, there are one or more topics, each describing the expected outcome and the scope of the research and innovation to be supported. The expected outcome are the desired effects of the project in the medium term. It's a description of how this topic will move the needle towards the destination. Those outcomes can be, for example, the uptake, use, or deployment of the project's results by its target users. The scope describes the area of research and innovation that needs to be tackled by the project so that the expected outcomes are achieved. The scope is the process to get to the outcomes. However, the scope is not a recipe prescribing the methods to use. That ingenuity and creativity must come from the researchers and innovators that are preparing the application, so that each topic is a competition of the best ideas to contribute to the expected outcomes and impacts. Hopefully by now you get a clearer picture that reading through the words in the topic will give you a detailed direction of the challenge that is in focus and what is needed to succeed. And then you apply your creativity on top to propose the best solution with a consortium of partners. You might be wondering now if all project types are the same. Glad you asked. No, they're not. They're not all the same, and we will cover the three main types quickly so you know which one to pick. Within the 6 clusters of Pillar 2, projects are mostly in one of these 3 categories. The first one is Coordination and Support Actions, or CSAs. These are networking and coordination projects that aim to be a center of gravity for new and important areas of research. The funding is not for research, but rather for this consortium to be the lighthouse and the support structure of many projects and specialists in a given field. In many calls for proposals, there's usually one of these CSAs. Then there are Research and Innovation Actions, or RIAs. RIAs are projects that normally start with early-stage academic ideas and proof of concept, that is TRL 2-3 in case you're familiar with the scale, and help them progress with collaborative R&D to prototype or pilot stage, TRL 5-6 in the same scale. These projects have most of their budget allocated to research activities to generate applied knowledge to solve a specific challenge that is specified in the topic. Lastly, there are Innovation Actions, or IAs. IAs are projects on technologies that are more mature than RIAs and therefore start when there are lab results or highly promising achievements, typically TRL 4. The project helps these technologies progress to just pre-commercial stages, typically TRL 7 and 8. It is quite normal for these projects to have the industrial or commercial value chain represented in the project as partners in order to mimic what will happen in the market once the project outcomes are achieved. Now, let's circle back to the 6 clusters and see what they're all about. In our video series, we will cover only innovation actions, which are more industry-oriented, with deadlines in 2024 spanned across clusters 4, 5, and 6. Let's quickly go through all the clusters and capture their priorities and destinations. Cluster 1 is on health, and it has calls for proposals in 2023 and 4 for the following destinations listed here. These calls relate mostly to addressing the burden of multiple diseases in a way that they impact us in our daily lives, in our capacity to work, and on society as a whole. A lot of this research combines behavioral changes for citizens and communities, as well as the use of tools that increase the efficiency and effectiveness of care provided to patients, and maybe even before they are patients, meaning tools available for citizens and primary care professionals. There is a significant driver across these destinations to maintain health more than to manage or cure diseases. Both factors are needed, but there is a growing demand for prevention approaches rather than simply remediation. To the extent that European partners are leaders in these projects, then successful projects will help maintain Europe as an innovative and globally competitive player in the health industry. And this final logic applies to all clusters. Cluster 2 is on culture, creativity, and inclusive societies. Cluster 2 has calls for proposals in 2023 and 4 for the following destinations listed here. The focus of these destinations is on innovative approaches for democracy and governance, to acknowledge the role of our past and our culture towards current industries, not forgetting the social transformations that we're all going through related to media consumption. Cluster 3 is on civil security for society, and it has calls for proposals in 2023 and 4 on these destinations. These destinations look at how to maintain citizens in the Union safe and protected against crime and terrorism, which means not only protecting people, but also the infrastructure and the means of communication that are used almost invisibly in our social fabric. Cluster 4 is on digital, industry, and space. Cluster 4 has these calls of proposals in 2023 and 4 for the following destinations listed here. This is a very broad cluster in terms of destinations, but the overarching theme in all of these destinations is to think of the technologies and platforms that need to be in place towards widespread use of digital applications, increased competitiveness of European industry, and space exploration and exploitation. The goal is to upkeep Europe as a frontrunner in these areas while still respecting the climate, our societies, and the individual humans that will use these technologies. Cluster 5 is on climate, energy, and mobility, and it has calls for proposals in 2023 and 4 for the following destinations listed here. These destinations are all urgently related to climate action and how we achieve climate neutrality through and beyond a transition to greener energy supplies, more efficient energy use, as well as increased safety and modalities in mobility that respect the environment. And finally, Cluster 6 is on food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and the environment. Cluster 6 has calls for proposals in 2023 and 4 on the following destinations listed here. The underlying paradigm of Cluster 6 is the need for a transformative change of the European economy and society to reduce environmental degradation, halt the decline of biodiversity, and better manage natural resources while meeting our climate objectives and ensuring food and water security. The research and innovation priorities focus on further strengthening our autonomy in the energy and food sectors. Finally, we have arrived at the tips and tricks section of this video, and I want to congratulate you for coming this far. We have gathered here some insights to get you started on this process, which are based on common questions that we get when helping to build a consortium. Here they are. Number 1, what is the right consortium size? There isn't a right size, but there is a rule of thumb. The minimum consortium size is very often 3 partners from 3 countries. But this table shows historically the sizes of approved projects in Horizon Europe. If you look at the last column, based on a population of a bit more than 300 approved projects, you will see that for innovation action projects, on average, each partner gets around or a bit more than €500,000. If you know the budget of the topic you're applying, which is public knowledge, you can work backwards to the right size for the consortium of that topic. Question 2, what is the right number of countries? Every European project needs to have a European dimension. That means that you need to assess for your project how does the inclusion of different countries benefit your case. To the extent that your area of research varies widely in Europe or has local barriers for adoption, then that calls for inclusion of more countries. If you need a rule of thumb, take the average number of participants calculated in the previous question and do slightly more than half of those participants. Question number 3, what are the right partners to include? Well, partners always need to be complementary. Think of your own value chain when you bring your product or service to the market. You likely need suppliers, transformers, integrators, customers, and end users. An R&D consortium is not the same as the final commercial value chain, since most partners need to be engaged in R&D while in the project, but is also not a one-off constellation that is only relevant for a few years. If you read the call text meticulously, you will often see hints or requests for specific partner types and roles. It is really important not to read the call diagonally. So what are the right partners to include? Everyone with a credible and actionable role to bring your innovation to use or to market. Those can be universities, large companies, startups, governmental agencies, associations of end users, among others. Question 4, how long is a project? The project duration is usually decided by the partners based on the activities to be carried out. Reviewers will assess if the timeline is credible to achieve the expected outcomes. For an innovation action, 3 years starts to be credible. The normal range is 3 to 5 years and occasionally longer. Question 5, how much work is needed to prepare an application like this? It is demanding, but acknowledge that this is a competition at the European scale. Only the best will succeed. Larger consortia require more time for coordination, but realistically aim for an effort in the range of 1,000 hours between all partners. This includes building a consortium, aligning partners' needs and expectations, defining a project theme that motivates everyone, writing the project to align those needs with the topic's ambition, doing regular meetings, design elements for the application, and then all the work up to submission. External support can be used to alleviate partner effort and to coordinate the process, but the creativity comes from the consortium. Question 6, and the last question. What if the project is rejected? Is that usable in some way? Yes, absolutely. We have seen in our own rejected proposals that the collaboration to deliver the application brings the partners closer and willing to collaborate, despite the negative result. Very often, new grant applications are evaluated both nationally and at the European level, or partners just start a bilateral collaboration with own funds. This is fairly common, and the proposal created the introduction that everyone needed to work together. There is also the possibility to find a new topic in the future that addresses a similar scope. The proposal can be reworked to try again. Remember that no single project will solve a destination. So there are multiple topics with similarities and collectively aim at that destination. So it is possible to find a new one that is sufficiently similar. 'Cause We hope this video motivated you to consider innovation actions as a tool for research and development funding and to establish value networks around you. This was just the introduction video, and we have other videos that dive deeper in the actual opportunities in specific clusters. I invite you to look at those now, or at least into the cluster that caught more of your attention. As a last note, if you would like to have a talk with us at Innovate about specific opportunities that you would like to pursue, be that for 2024 calls or for something else in the future, please reach out using one of these contacts here. And thank you so much for your attention.